Thank you, Jerome Powell, for raising interest rates. For the first time in 20 years, savers are being rewarded. That's freaking wonderful. And debtors are finally going to have to come and pay the price. It's about doggone time. Look, I got debt, and I like it. I'm working on knocking it out to be debt free, and I'm working on saving more because now we're being rewarded to put our money in safer stuff as opposed to speculate. All right, so I just got done reading my man Ed Chancellor's book, The Price of Time. I got freaking tons of notes on top of tons of notes on top of tons of notes, as you can see. It's actually interesting. I need the hard copy in books or the paper. I don't care, but I need a physical book. My man Adam said, "Hey, I want to send you a audio book on something." I said, "Dude, I don't listen to audio books because I actually need to sit and highlight it and take notes and to look at there's citations and footnotes too, which is what we're going to look at here today." And so basically, Ed's premise is when we had financial repression, i.e., we're suppressing interest rates, which are benefiting corporate America essentially, benefiting government, not benefiting households at all. There'll be a lot more to say on this. I disagree with some of Ed's conclusions, but that's okay. Basically, what has happened is by suppressing interest rates, we've inflated paper assets, basically, and real estate assets as well, investment property and things of that nature. I agree with that. So the cheaper it is to borrow, the more the borrowing is going to happen to finance speculative enterprises. And those aren't long-term growth things. Those are just speculation, turn a quick profit. And that 100% happened. It's without question. The lower the interest rates, the cheaper it costs to borrow, the more speculation you're going to have, the bigger the bubble will be in the future, which will ultimately burst. It's just there's no two ways around that. But it's worse than that because the people who are diligent in savings are being screwed by the people who are engaging in speculative behavior. And this is what pisses me off, man. We socialize the risk. We all take the risk, but we privatize the profits. Only the Jamie Dimons of the world and whatnot get profits. We don't get anything. It's crazy. All right, so we're going to look at this interesting right here. We're going to come up this, and so one of the things, again, one of the things I love about reading books that have citations, you get to see what they're referencing. This right here is going to be proof positive that higher interest rates are better for us, without question. Now, this is from China. China's high saving rate, myth and reality. Now, this is from 2010. Oh, it's older. No, it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Bank for International Settlements. And now, interesting, because your old buddy Josh, when I wrote this book, You Can Retire on Social Security. It's not 100 pages, something like that, 112, something like that. So I take a chapter 13, What Savings Crisis? Because we got all kinds of people saying, we're not saving enough, we're not saving enough, we're not saving enough. And I say, oh, isn't that interesting? I wrote this book when I was 49, crazy. This is what they'll say. This is from the Fed, St. Louis Federal Reserve Board. And they'll say, look, the savings rate's going way down. Oh, my goodness. But what they don't cite is the taxes we pay in Social Security. All right, so now we're paying between you and your employer 7.65 times 2 is what, 15.3%. It wasn't always like that, amigos. It wasn't always like that. So we're paying a lot of money to our safety net via Social Security transfers. And you have to pay it. There's no getting around that. So you're going to pay that unless you're working under the table. Whatever, teaches all. But then you're not going to get Social Security benefit. Anyway, so the higher the forced savings, the lower inherently would be your general household saving, because you don't have enough money left over after paying for the high savings. And on top of that, the high prices of your assets you have to buy, your house. The biggest expenditure by far is your household because of the financing costs first and foremost. But the interest rates are low, Josh. The prices are high because of speculation. And now you can make an argument, I've done this, what I'm saying, that the real estate market actually was going up even in the 70s and 80s. Even when the 70s and the early 80s, the interest rates are going up as well. Yes, there's some tax for single individual homes. Yes, 100%. People got to live someplace, dudes. People got to live someplace. And instead of paying increasing inflation, i.e. renting, people say, I'm just locking in and going to buy a house and fix it. Have a fixed payment, which in that case, inflation was reducing the annual cost on your debt. Don't do that. Don't do that because you don't know what the future is going to hold. But anyway, there's some reason why we still had high demand for housing under inflationary terms and low down payments, whatnot. But paper assets were absolutely destroyed in the 70s when interest rates are going up. Bond stocks, you look at it, man, paper assets were getting crushed. Speculative stuff, on the other hand, that's different. Speculative stuff, especially when the tax codes and things of that nature going in there. With a TRA, the Tax Reform Act of 80, there's 86 a TRA and another one, FEFRA or something like that in 1982, which killed some of these speculative real estate bubbles. Be it as it may, when interest rates go down, speculative assets go up. A lot of times paper assets, but sometimes investor real estate as well. That's just a fact, and so you're rewarding speculators while you're destroying savers, because interest rates go down. Guess what happens to savers? They don't make any money. Thus, they say, I'm not getting paid on the bank, so I'm gonna have to go and I'm gonna have to speculate myself as well, which leads to bubbles. And when those bubbles pop, look out below. All right, so let's dive into this right quick. Because the issue isn't that China has high savings rate. I'm going to show you. Watch. The actual issue is, why does China have a high savings rate? So here's disposable income. The household's incomes made more than 2/3 of the disposable income as a percentage of GDP in 1992. Fast forward to 2008, they made 58%. So they went down by, and that's a good about 10% or so. Yeah, about 10%. A little bit more than that. Yet their propensity to save was about 29.5 as a percentage of GDP in 1992. Their propensity to save went up by about 30%. So their actual disposable income share went down as a percentage of GDP, but their propensity to save went up. Isn't that interesting? The big drop in household share in gross national income over the past 15 years can be attributed to a couple things. A fall in the labor share of national income. Here's employment in China. Labor downsizing of Social Security in China in percent right there. That's the number of people employed. Look at it, just dropping like a brick in water. And yet there's a national savings rate going up. Shoosh. Interesting. The savings rate went up. That's a good thing, Josh. The employment went down. Let's keep going, because there's more to the story. So national labor share. A decline in investment income. Investment income, what is that? Net investment income, what you get on your bank accounts. Interesting. The household income share has been dragged down by shrinking net interest income. As a share of GDP, the net interest income halved in the past 15 years, accounting for a quarter of the decline in household income shares. So we weren't getting paid to hold our money in the bank. Net interest income was being reduced, which hurt household income without question. As you can see, I just proved it to you right there. Household income as a percentage of GDP fell. Because people were being laid off left and right because the Chinese restructured lots of corporations and things of that nature that they had, the zombie companies. B, the interest they were getting was being just destroyed. There wasn't any interest. Isn't that crazy? On top of that, check this out. A third factor behind falling household income is reduced net transfers, i.e. the social safety net. Income redistribution through taxes, contributions, and transfers has so far been ineffective in stabilizing the household share of income. So they're reducing the net transfers, and the net household income was dropping. This is mostly because of an increased contributions required to fund the large pension benefits, in other words, our version of Social Security. Social welfare contributions made a household sector triple between 1992 and 2007 from 1.4% to 4.2%. The pension reform introduced individual pension accounts funded by mandatory employee contributions, which are deductions to household disposable income. And they got rid of dividends back then for a number of years. They got rid of dividends because they're laying all these people off. So he said, look, companies, don't be paying the dividends to people who are left. You're going to have to use that to have a basic social safety net. But it wasn't enough. So the Chinese said, dude, the social safety net is frayed. We're not getting much. Our interest income is dropping like a brick of water, which means our percentage disposable income relative to GDP is dropping like a brick of water. What do we have to do to make up the difference? We're going to have to save more. We're going to have to tighten the belt and save more. That's exactly what they did. So you might see the savings So look at the Chinese, they're saving a lot. They're saving a lot more because of circumstances of lower interest rates. I hope that makes sense, man. They had to save more. The propensity to save went up because they weren't making any money on their bank accounts. They were worried about being laid off, if not outright laid off. And on top of that, the percentage that of social safety net was fraying anyway. So they said we're going to have to save more with less. Essentially, they're making do with less. But now, because net interest income, I'm talking about Jerome Powell here in the United States, we don't have to make do with as much less. We can get our dollar goes further with interest because the interest rates are higher. Not to worry, because when the interest rates are low, interest rates could play a role in lifting corporate profits. Between 1992 and 2007, net interest payments by non-bankings were also halved as a share of GDP, contributing to 30% of the rise in corporate saving. While one may attribute this to financial repression that depresses funding, i.e., it destroys savers, mom and pop in the household sector and the banking, and subsidized corporations, they actually say deleveraging and paying off debt, maybe. Net corporate debts, the difference between corporate loans and deposits as a share of GDP, more than halved in those 16 years, reducing net corporate interest payments. I mean, look at this. Net interest, here's corporate savings going up, net interest payments going down. So the corporations, the debtors, were paying less on their debt. They could save more. The households, mom and pop, Chin's a Chinese name, right? Were freaking, they were being penalized by having savings accounts. It's saying it's rob from the poor and give to the rich is what's happening here, without question. And that's what's been happening in the United States as well. Check this out. This is nuts. From Med Faber. Since 1997, the total amount of buybacks has exceeded the cash dividends paid by U.S. firms, share buybacks. From 1980 to 2018, the proportion of dividend-paying companies decreased from 78% to 43%, while the proportion of companies with share buybacks increased to 53% from 28%. You can't spend corporate buybacks. You can't. You can spend dividends, but you can't spend corporate buybacks. So we're getting repression with lower interest rates, and we're getting less companies paying a dividend, and the companies that do pay a dividend are paying less. And so what's happening, the inflated share price, well, that's great if you own shares, but then you got to sell the shares to return some money to you. And how is that being happening? How are they buying back the company? Oh, are they freaking taking on leverage? Massive increases of leverage in which to basically say, we're going to buy back shares, we're going to borrow at 2%, buy back shares, which gives us immediate hit, a good hit, I should say, a boost, I should say, in our share price because the number of shares outstanding is reduced. Thus, the earnings per share goes up because earnings per share is based on what? The total amount of net income divided by the number of shares. You reduce the number of shares, your total amount of earnings goes up inherently. Doesn't mean your corporation's been run better. It just means you borrowed over here. This is what ROE is, such a false narrative, return on equity, because you can juice it with leverage. We're borrowing over here to buy back shares over here, thus reducing the number of shares, thus giving us an immediate decrease in PE ratio because we have less shares. Who's the benefit of that? Well, obviously the corporate titans. Obviously the hedge fund managers. Now, you and I, to some degree, we are, as long as we take some of the gains off the table. How many people take any gains off the table? Not many. You can't spend corporate buybacks. You can spend net interest income, and you can spend dividends. So with higher interest rates, we'll wrap this up. We'll land this plane. It's going to be harder for corporations to leverage to buy back shares. It's just all there is to it, which is good. I got no problem with share buybacks as long as it's done with cash flow as opposed to freaking leverage. I got no problem with that. I know Bernie saying, corporate buybacks. Look, man, corporate buybacks are good because it says I think I have more value in buying back my own company than I do in either paying a dividend or buying another acquisition. I got no problem with that as long as it's done with cash flow and not debt. So that's all there is to it. But if we're taking on debt to buy back our shares to give us a quick burst on our PE ratio, again, first would be a drop in this case, a price earnings ratio, because we've reduced the number of shares. What does that do to the frig? And that what happens ultimately is it'll make the share price higher because people, oh, the price earnings ratio is low. What does that do to the corporate titans who run the shows, who get the bonuses and all that? It gives them a quick cash flow. It's sugar. It's cocaine for these people, man. It becomes addictive. You and me, though, on the other hand, yeah, we might get a temporary increase in share price, and maybe it sticks, maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But by the time it comes to retire, does it stick? I don't know. All I know is we want dividends because dividends you can turn to buy more shares or you can turn to pay or just spend. You can't spend corporate buybacks. So with higher interest rates, they'll be less likely to leverage to buy back shares. And higher interest rates mean what? Probably more money go to dividends and probably more money go into your pocket with higher savings accounts. So tip of the hat to you, Jerome Powell. Keep it up, man. Keep it up. This is good for household financing without question. Household capital formation, household budgets, higher interest rates are good for the first time. I'd love to hear your thoughts. We'll see you.